Present. We have other members in and out presenting bills and making quorums in other committees. This time of the year it gets a little busy around, but thank you for being here. Appreciate my committee members that are here. And we're going to start taking up legislation in one moment. Let's have a word of prayer and we will get started. Lord, we do thank you again for this day you've given us. Thank you for the blessings of life and the opportunity we have to serve the people in our district and the state of Georgia. We just ask you to bless us. Let us have your wisdom and discernment in all that we undertake to do. Go with us now in your Son's name. Amen. All righty, we've got 4 bills that we're supposed to take up today. Come on up, my brother. And I think we're going to take Representative Silcox. You got a little bill about fireworks. You want to talk to us about an exciting, explosive item here? Let me get you turned on, madam. Podium mic, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as background to this bill for the committee's information, we did have a number of folks in Sandy Springs that were upset about fireworks going off at the middle of the day, terrorizing their children, their animals, etc. And so I did bring this to attention of Chairman Willard and Chairman Golick and others. And so they suggested I draft something up. We do have some guests from my wonderful district in Sandy Springs that can testify to the facts. But just wanted to let you know that in the subcommittee, do want to thank Subcommittee Chair Welch for his assistance in revising this.
Let me stop if you don't
Yes.
mind, Representative. We got 2 subs in our folder. Do you have one you decided to work off of at this time?
Yes, thank you so much.
Can you give us the LC number at the top of it, the one you want to present?
Yes, sir. I'm working off LC 411107S.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So please just discard the other one.
I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am. Presentation.
And in the subcommittee, Sub-Chairman Welch and others were not happy with the first draft of this bill because it would limit the counties that were exempted from the preemption on fireworks to just the Atlanta Regional Commission. This version takes that out so that this would be constitutional. It would be general law. It would apply to the whole state. And it basically combines 2 provisions so that between the hours, if you're looking at subsection B1, on any day beginning at 10 a.m., then this language is stricken to 11:59 p.m., that the local noise ordinance of the county or municipal corporation would control the use and ignition of fireworks. That's really the only change. Chairman Welch did, just for consistency's sake, he thought perhaps we should have an amendment to change on line 23, 9 p.m. to 10 a.m. to make it consistent. But other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, and everyone from the fireworks industry and the ACCG, the GMA, everybody seems to be pretty much happy.
I did speak with GMA as well as a representative from the fireworks industry, and they were fine with this.
Okay, we don't want to undo what it's taken us 3 or 4 years to try to do in one fell swoop here, if we could help it, because I do love fireworks myself. Any questions from the committee at this time? I appreciate your work on this. Okay, wait a minute. We've lit them up. All right. I think number 1, Chairman Welch.
I was going to move due pass with an amendment.
All right. Let me see what number 27 wants to share with us. Just a moment.
Chairman Welch over there, so I'll wait and second his
Okay.
motion.
Very good. Thank
if
you,
it's
sir.
in order.
All right. Back to you, Chairman Welch.
Mr. Chairman, at the appropriate time, I would like to make an amendment, but I recommend due pass on LC 411107S.
All right. And we have a second, Chairman Martin.
Yes, sir.
All right. We have a move and second. I'm trying to think. We got to have an amendment now. You have an amendment?
Yes, sir. I'd like to amend line 23 striking 9 p.m. and inserting 10 a.m., and that will allow for fireworks to be ignited on January 1st, July 3rd, July 4th, and December 31st from 10 a.m. all the way up until midnight, which I think is part of the intent of allowing people to celebrate those days.
Okay. All right, committee, y'all have heard the, yes, sir.
Line 23, we're strike 9 p.m. and substitute in 10 a.m. so that they can be fired or ignited all day long.
All right, we have one question, I think, maybe, number 23.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm trying to follow, so on line 15, what is the end time now?
The end time-
11:59 p.m.?
Correct.
Okay, so we moved it from 9 p.m. to essentially midnight, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I thought you were trying to tighten it with the noise ordinances of the county.
We are, because we're really shrinking it down just to one provision instead of two, as it was before.
And how does that, I guess I'm a
Well, it
little lost.
extends the time. I will grant you that.
Okay.
But it does shrink it down if you look at the original code section.
Well, Mr. Matt,
Yes, sir. Go ahead,
Um,
explain that for
because
us.
I did work with Representative Silcox on the changes. So what we're doing is allowing for local governments to adopt noise ordinances that would regulate the explosiveness of the time during those periods of time. So from 10 a.m. till midnight on any day other than what I'll call the holidays, then on those days, noise ordinances can control. They would have some level of control to regulate the ignition of fireworks.
Just every other day of the year.
Yes, every other day of the
Non-holiday.
week through that,
Okay.
that period.
Non-defined holidays.
right.
Okay.
And then on those defined
So
holidays,
basically on
the entire, from 10 a.m. till midnight and even on till, I think it's 1 a.m. on January 1st, folks can ignite fireworks from 10 a.m. till midnight or 1 a.m.
Okay, so I guess it's confusing because you're saying, okay, so essentially you're saying if there's not a noise ordinance that overrides, they can shoot them from 10 a.m. to midnight,
Mhm.
essentially. And, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have the amendment. Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, amendment is affirmed. All right, we have the bill before us. We have a move and second to pass this bill as amended in committee. No other questions? All in favor, let it know by saying. All in favor, let it know by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign. All right, we'll need to get the bill as amended for you to get to rules.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
ma'am?
Thank you very much.
It's passed and ready to go. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Hope they're all this easy. Probably not. Let me see what I did with my sheet here. Representative Smyer, you want to come up and talk to us about some alcohol products?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, House Bill 510 is a bill that would appeal Code Section 3321 subsection D. And what it does is it's a population measure that affects 3 counties. And as it relates to the ordinance dealing with doing business within a certain feet of a package store. And what we're asking is that, I've got a call from my city attorney, and what we're asking that we repeal this population bill that states that you can't, you have to have a certain measure of footage to construct a package store. And what this was do will convert back to the law that affects all the other counties in the state.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't believe we did any substitution on yours. Would you give us the LC number you're working from, sir?
The LC 363321.
Okay, make sure everyone has that in the folder. And I think also in your folder where it talks about on line 9, deleting subsection D of code section 3-3-21, you should have a copy, the second page in your, there should be a sheet in your folder that has that section D. that he's referring to in that code section that is being deleted. So we made sure all the committee members have that. Any question for Representative Smiley about his legislation? And everybody's good, all of our alcohol folks is good with making this change. Okay? Any questions? All right, this time we'll entertain a motion. Got a move and second. Any questions this time? If not, all in favor, let it know by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? Okay, we've got one opposition. Representative West, you're opposed. Okay. Thank you very much. The bill's passed. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Glanton, you have a bill for us, sir.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much.
You got an LC number for us.
Yes, sir, I will give it to you, and thank you to the members of the committee as well. I present to you House Bill 485, LC 363353S. And just to give you a little background on this, Mr. Chairman, the current law requires a county or municipality that has not previously authorized the package sale of distilled spirits to hold a special election to authorize the manufacturing, distribution, or package sales of the distilled spirits. In order to hold the special election referendum, there is a petition requirement of 35% of the registered voters. This bill does away with that requirement for a petition, and it also does away for the requirement of a referendum election for the local governing authority by regulation or ordinance. Now, it authorizes the manufacturing or distribution of distilled spirits. This bill will not change anything regarding the retail sales of distilled spirits.
All right, committee, you've heard the presentation, and this is for basically to allow distiller to come into a dry county and produce their distilled spirits and then sell it outside that county.
Only in the unincorporated
Only.
portions of a county.
Okay.
And, Mr. Chairman, this bill, the following trade commissions have signed off on this bill: the Georgia Beer Wholesalers, the Georgia Alcohol Dealers Association, as well as Wine and Spirits Wholesalers of Georgia.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have a question, sir. Let's see. Chairman Welch?
Thank you. And Representative Blanton,
Yes, sir.
question for you. Does this do away with it does away with the referendum requirement, or can the people still petition by referendum to make a change?
As far as manufacturing, as I understand it, as far as manufacturing and those who manufacture to distribute to the wholesalers, not to retail, to the wholesalers, this does away with that requirement. And the governing body can authorize it, can issue a license authorizing it.
Okay, and so if the governing body does not, may I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
So if the governing authority does not support this, then the people could not override the wishes of the governing body through a referendum?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
All right, any further questions? If not, we stand for the committee's action. All right, we got a move, and I heard two moves, so we'll have a move in a second. All right. No further questions. All in favor, let know by saying aye. Any opposed, like sign? All right, got one opposed.
That's right.
Thank you, Representative Welch. Or Chairman Welch. All right, Representative Clanton, we will try to get this out for you today and be in the rules for you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you, sir. All right, we're down to Representative Chairman Harrell or Vice Chair Harrell. House Bill 353. Have you got some subs for us too?
Is that all right for me to just present from here?
Whatever's easier on you, if you like it there, or you can go down front.
I'd probably need to stay a little close to my buddy today.
Is that right?
Yes, sir, this is House Bill 353, and let me start by thanking my co-sponsors of this bill, Meadows of the 5th, the 2nd, Earhart of the 36th, Reverend Al Williams of the 168th, and Chairman Hatchett of the 150th. We have a first substitute, which is LC 363323. And this is the substitute that came after our first hearing, or subcommittee hearing, where Chairman Welch made a couple of modifications. So if it pleases Chairman Maxwell, would ask that Chairman Welch present those couple of modifications in his sub, and then I'll speak to the sub I prepared.
All right, are we gonna be voting on two subs, or are we gonna cull this down to one sub here?
One.
All right.
My sub incorporates everything that Chairman Welch has without modifying any of the changes he made.
All right,
And
I'm
then adds
easily,
additional provisions, some of which you requested.
I'm easily confused, so I just wanna make sure, okay?
363323.
If it pleases the body, it may be helpful for me to go through Mr. Harrell's sub and then point out the changes that we made in subcommittee in his own sub. That way, we're not dealing with two different documents.
I think that would be a good idea. Let's try to go back and forth. So you're gonna be looking at which sub then?
So I can tell you what changes the subcommittee made in his sub, which is LC 391638 ERS.
All right, let's go with that one. I think that'd be a good idea.
So we put the other one away. So the subcommittee recommended a do pass but made two changes in their substitute. And that is at line 41, the term of the pawn transactions, the subcommittee recommended a reduction down from the 30 months to a 24-month period, and the corresponding days of 720 days, not to exceed 720 days. So that was the change at line 41. And then the other change that the subcommittee recommended is at lines 111, it's 110, 111, and 112 is the context. And in order to define, to make sure that the out-of-pocket expenses were not excessive, we added the language that you see at line 111 that says not to exceed $250. And those were the two changes that the subcommittee had made, and I just wanted to make sure those were reflected in this new sub.
All right, Chairman Harrell.
All right, I appreciate that. And in addition to the two modifications that Chairman Welch just mentioned, we also made in LC 391638 a couple of additional modifications. If you will look to line 110, what we have done previously, line 110 that starts with paragraph D, in the original version it read for fixed term pawn transactions only, and then started with a lowercase r, reasonable. So it was the request of some to make sure that if we are going to return excess proceeds to the borrower in the event that they did have a vehicle repossessed, that that should apply to both the old type of pawn transactions as well as the new pawn transaction. So we struck on line 110 for fixed term pawn transactions only and made the R a capital R. So that capital R at the very beginning of that sentence is the new sentence, so that the reasonable out-of-pocket cost limited to what Chairman Welch just mentioned, no more than $250, would apply to both the old product as well as the new product in the event that a vehicle was sold at the end of during a pawn transaction. The second change, if you will turn to, I believe, beginning on line 280, which is on page 9, and I believe this was a request from Chairman Maxwell. From 281, from 280 and all the way down to 284, we have added, this is part of the disclosure that the pawnbrokers provide their consumers. So we added this additional paragraph 18 that reads, a statement in at least 14-point boldface type that the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection through the Consumer Protection Unit of the Attorney General is the appropriate entity to contact should the consumer have a complaint, and it will be incumbent to include the current telephone number and website. So again, this is further disclosure that the consumer, if they do have an issue, will have readily available on their ticket, their transaction ticket, who to call or which website to visit, just to put them in touch more readily with someone should they have an issue during their transaction. If you will look further to line 350, let me find the right point. Charges are not. Let me pull out my version, which I've already highlighted. It'll be easier for me to read instead of the one in my packet. On line 350, we inserted, make sure it's here. Okay, on line 354, actually, in the new print on line 354, at the end of the line, we inserted after the word charges, new language is on the additional principal amount only, and then the comma picks up from where we were. Again, there was a concern that should a consumer renew a transaction and get additional principal, that the rate would not reset to a higher interest rate. So this seeks to suggest that only the increment, only the additional amount of principal could incur a higher interest rate, and the core amount that was in this transaction would remain at the lower rate. Again, another consumer protection requested and added. And then also on coming down on line 356, you'll read the code section there, 4412.131, and then a comma. At that point, we inserted the following: and shall not charge interest and pawn swap charges on the original principal amount that is more than 12.5% per month, or the rate of interest and amount of charges applicable. So again, on that original core amount, we are limiting the maximum to the 12.5, the lower of the two rates provided in law today, or if the consumer was at a more competitive rate, or that applicable amount, which could be lower than 12.5. So the idea, again, is to protect the consumer should they choose to renew and add additional principal and keep the rate lower. And I believe, let's see if there was any other change. I believe those were the changes over and above the two that Chairman Welch mentioned. I believe that's it. So what we have now in the final sub, LC 39-1638, is a bill that improves industry that is operating in Georgia today. And the improvements are consumer-focused improvements. And what they do is they take and offer a new product called a fixed-term pawn transaction that is now limited to 24 months or less. And what it gives the consumer is a finite end date to this transaction, at which time the total amount due is fully amortized, and at the end of that term, they would owe nothing more. It also provides that through this blended rate with no prepayment penalties, should they be able to pay off the pawn in advance, they will have no prepayment penalties and effectively have another opportunity to lower their rate. It provides, in effect, if there is a default and the pawnbroker has to sell the vehicle, that in both the old and the new product, that any excess proceeds are returned to the borrower, another consumer protection. Both products are now under the Federal Truth in Lending and with the full disclosure, including the additional disclosures that you heard read, requested by Chairman Maxwell, with, in bold type, if there is a problem, here's the Department of State to call, here's the number and the website to report any irregularity with the transaction. So that is the bill as modified. I'll be glad to answer questions or take any other comments on it. And I'll yield back to you, sir.
All right, number 23, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, just to clarify, so on lines 110 through 112, what you changed, you said that this is going to apply to all transactions, old and new product, but it won't apply to existing loans under the old product because there's already a contract in place, correct?
That would
Or
be
will
my
it-
expectation, yes, ma'am. So
Okay.
if there's
So it would
something.
just be going forward,
Yes.
new, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
All right, number 22.
Yes. My question is kind of two or three-fold, if I may.
Yes, sir.
One, we also had in our disclosures the fact that they could use these loan processes towards the military, but there was a cap of 38, I think 36, 38% that the federal wouldn't let them charge more than that. So, in fact, are they doing that? Are they,
One of the consumer products or consumer advocacy groups suggested that there are regulations on military bases and surrounding them with regard to the products that may be offered. It's my understanding that particular regulation specifically excludes this product, this tied-upon product. And further, as we discussed the other day, the local governments, through their zoning and location of these facilities, these stores in their community, certainly have the ability today to zone and locate facilities in a distance away from the military bases.
but are they, I mean, so you're saying that the 38 or 36, whatever it is not respect to this? They could do this at a military base? They could use this product in this bill?
No, not on the base, no, sir. That's not my understanding.
Okay,
at
so
all.
are they selling it outside the gate? I mean, are they selling it at the 38%, or are they going at the 100 and some percent?
Again, I wish I had, do you have somebody have the little green sheet handed out? The green sheet handed out had a specific exclusion for this type of product. It's not covered under that military legislation. So it's apples and oranges. It's not the same product. This is a totally different product. It's for a different consumer. If there is a concern at the local community versus the location of these retail pawn broker operations, the local community, each city or county, and those communities that have military bases would have the ability to set their zoning to allow them to operate if they so choose, at a greater distance from the military base.
And then charge. And may I have one more question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The other question isn't related to the military so much as it is the loan structure for whether it's 6 months, 20 months, or whatever it happens to be. The example that we had on the sheet here, and it may not be correct because I didn't validate it, but it showed each month the interest that the person had to pay
Right.
was identical. In other words, it was the monthly payment was based on the original loan,
Right.
so that each month, it wasn't reduced each month based on what was owed,
Right.
but equal each month the same amount.
Well, again, that is not the intent of the legislation. That is not my understanding of what the legislation requires. But I am open, and I think Chairman Welch has been working with us to craft, again, additional modifications that will ensure that is not the case. I believe the handout was erroneous.
It could be.
And the bill says that there is no, computed pre-computed interest, it's not prepaid, it's not capitalized, it's not in advance. So we're open, that's not the intent of the legislation, so we're open to adding language. And in fact, I have, if Chairman Welch has a modification that he's been working on, I am 100% receptive to that, to give people additional confidence that the intent of this fixed-term transaction for interest to be computed on a daily rate, fully amortized over the term, that at the end of the first month, when you make your payment, a portion of that payment goes to principal and a portion goes to interest. So on the second month, when you apply the interest rate, you're applying it to a lower principal balance, and therefore the amount of interest is lower. And for the third month and the fourth month, and so over for the entire term. That is the intent of the legislation. I think Chairman Welch may have some language that will help put at rest or put at ease some of those that may feel different. And so, if at the appropriate time, perhaps Chairman Welch would be, and I also have additional language if need be as well.
Representative Plaza, you okay? 29?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, Rick.
That's me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Representative, who oversees tidal pond? Are they regulated? Do they report to the state? Is there a regulatory agency that oversees them and their reporting?
There are several. First, this bill, quite frankly, is brought at the result of the federal regulatory structure that is identifying ways for consumers to end the cycle of debt and to have more disclosure and ability to have a fixed end date. And so that's the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau at the federal level. They also receive complaints and reports. As mentioned with the new addition to the language in this bill, also the Governor's Office of Consumer Protection under the Attorney General's office also receives complaints, if there are any, in this industry as well.
But may I follow up?
Yes, sir.
But as far as now, loan companies, banks, they're all regulated by auditors that come in and audit their books. Is that right?
I'll take you at your word.
Okay.
I'm not an expert there.
So does tidal pond people they don't have to?
I'm not aware of an
Submit
auditing
to that?
requirement for the tidal pond industry, no, sir.
Okay.
Not from, a regulator.
So it would depend on may I carry on, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
sir.
So it would depend on the consumer reading that bold print to know that they could file a complaint with the Attorney General or the Governor's office?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Now, I want to go back to one thing you mentioned, the federal guidelines of military members. If it's a federal guideline, that's going to trump what we've got anyway, so.
That's right. To be clear, I mean, the tidal pond stores can operate on a military base. They do
Right.
not operate on a military base.
Yeah, but if they were to, and I don't know if that applied to payday lending or some other lending group, but regardless, if it applied to tidal ponds, they'd have to go by the federal guidelines. I would think. Well, I've just generated a whole bunch of questions here somehow. Good gracious. Number 27.
But number one in your heart, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I was going along that same line just to ask the author of the bill. I know you said you weren't sure of this new transaction that's a fixed term pawn transaction. I haven't read this latest version that we had, but going over earlier, I didn't see where this was treated differently. And I don't mean to disagree with the author of the bill, but I don't believe there's anything in this bill that would alleviate the same regulation they have under federal law now. Would you agree with that? They're still regulated, so that the new term that we're doing here is still going to fall into the same or similar federal regulation, and thus afford those military folks the same protection. We're not doing anything today to take any of those protections away from the military, I guess is what I'm asking the author. Do you agree? Okay, fair enough. That's what I was after, Mr. Chairman.
All right, John, you have another question, sir.
Yes, sir. my intent in asking a question about the military was not so much what the rate was or where they were located. And I think it's not a secret that I disagree with the amount of interest that's being charged. But if they can make money at 36 or 38%, why are they charging other members of our state hundreds of percent?
Well, if I might, I think it's a false comparison.
Okay.
It's there clearly, as we heard at the last meeting, there's clearly over 1 million consumers in the United States that have entered one of these transactions at one point or another, and there is a demand, a consumer demand for it, for people that do not have sufficient credit or wherewithal to borrow from other types of entities. So what this does is it gives that consumer yet another option, and that's what and there's clearly a market for this product, right? It exists today. I think one of the title pawn lenders testified they had between 80 and 100,000 open contracts in Georgia on any given time during the month. So that's the significant market for this product.
Yeah, you're up. You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
sorry.
now,
I don't know what
that's
happened.
okay. So what I'm almost hearing you say is that there's a market for it at this price, but if there was a market at a lower price, the consumer would not take it?
If I sold you a pint of ice cream and made a profit for $1, and I sold it to you for 50 cents and still made some profit on it, why would any private business, any private industry, when they've come to a competitive market-based price and lending, why would you want to use the heavy hand of government to try to disrupt the free market? And that's what's occurring today. I mean, my bill, there's clearly a market at the rates that are in the marketplace today. And I'm not adjusting those rates in any way in this bill. In fact, I'm making them lower for the consumer that enters into a fixed-term transaction and is able to prepay with no penalty and exit the transaction earlier. So I just I don't think that it's a fair comparison to suggest to a private businessman that if you make $1 at one price, you should be happy making 95 cents in another.
Number 29.
Yes, sir, Smith. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Federal people regulate pawn brokers, pawn industry only at military bases. They don't have the right to come into the state to look at their books without some kind of subpoena or some kind of allegation of wrongdoing, but the people normally wouldn't go to the feds anyway. Bankers, loan companies, they're all subject to auditing, reporting, but pawn shops don't have to do any auditing or reporting at this time to anyone.
Not at the state level that I'm aware of. No.
So who is going to make sure that they're doing like they're supposed to be doing?
Well, you have a number of avenues of redress. Again, we're bringing this bill because of new federal regulations. That's the purpose of offering the new product. The federal government is impacting the financial community and on all financial products, including banks. So they are, and this was the CFPB, which is an administrative arm of the federal government, is having that type of impact, and that's what has motivated the genesis of offering this new product. So it's regulated there. And again, I'll repeat again, the Attorney General's office, the Georgia Office of Consumer Protection, will also provide an avenue for redress for consumers that feel that there's an issue with their title pawn.
But as you're saying, the FDIC, there's nobody, I know with banks, the FDIC, the state banking department, everybody in the world comes in and regulates banks and insurance.
And
department.
loan companies, they all have to,
Right,
have their records open, but pawn,
Do-
these title pawn people do not.
do not, you're right.
There's no one to oversee them. It's, between them and the good Lord
And the consumer.
and the
That's right.
consumer.
And the consumer making the choice on where they need to get their money. Yes, sir.
I have a serious problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me address that, because you know, I don't know all the details of regulatory agencies of others, but CFPB must have some ability to come in and regulate these various industries. And I'm looking for the notes I had at the first meeting. I'm sorry I'm a little bit behind today. I had a big bill on the floor and kind of took my focus. But you'll remember the last meeting, I listed a number of companies, including Citibank, JP Morgan, some title pawn industries, other lenders, that CFPB has levied millions and millions of dollars of punitive fines. So if they have no ability to come in and regulate, and to come in and inspect their business, and come in and make sure they're doing it right, where are these millions and millions of dollars of fines coming from? Clearly, CFPB has the ability to regulate this industry, and they're regulating all financial products across the nation, and it's just not, you know, if you have no ability to come in my business, why would I pay you a fine? It's happening every day. You must have the ability to regulate me if I'm paying you millions of dollars in regulatory penalties and fines.
All right, I got a couple more questions, and then we'll get to you, Chairman Welch. Number 27,
Mr.
Chairman Martin.
Just, these are sort of a question and sort of, I guess, a bit of comment, and if you want the comment, if we get to the point of a motion. But I'm just trying to understand, the gentleman, you know, makes a point about the regulation and the various things it makes, but is it not true that this industry, the only thing that they have when they make the loan is the title or the item you give them? They don't have any redress against the individual. They can't come and going back to Chairman Harrell's bill on the floor today, they can't take your house for your garbage fee. I mean, he passed that bill, but Chairman Harrell, isn't that true that if you come to this, whether it be this new transaction or the one that exists previously, they could only have from you that thing that you give them to secure the loan, right? They
Yes,
can't
sir.
come and get anything else you have in your house.
That's absolutely correct.
Isn't that the one of the, at least one of the differentiating points between them and a bank loan who would do a background check, and you might only sign over your mortgage, you know, to do that, but at the end of the day, they could garnish your wages, they could do a number of things, and that's why those facilities are a bit more highly regulated. I'm just trying to make sure I understand that we're in the same place after this bill, should it pass, that we were before, right?
That is absolutely correct. And Chairman Martin, I appreciate you covering for me for being kind of out of sorts today with not being as prepared as I was the other day. But you're absolutely correct.
Just trying to provide you a little time here while you're getting organized, like Chairman Setzler does sometimes for us on the floor. But no, Mr. Chairman, that was just what I wanted to try to get our hands around. I think that's the difference here. And I would say this as a comment: if folks have another place that offers a lower interest rate, I think anybody in the industry would tell you should go there first. And that's why it gives me some pause for us to sit in judgment about what these rates are or aren't, because if not but for these industries, even though the rates may be high, some of the folks might not have access to the money because they're unbanked. We've heard this in committee hearings before. So who is it for us to tell them that they can't have this option because they have no other one? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 23.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, I mean, is it not true that the reason that the banks are being overseen is because of the FDIC, and they're insuring those loans and the assets of the bank, whereas these are private entities that are putting the money out? And I do believe that the CFPB does regulate, it sounds like, with what you said. But anyway, that was my only question.
Okay. Chairman Welch, you gonna enlighten us on some other issues here?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of issues that I think Representative Harrell has raised and wants to make clear in the legislation. The first being that that it is his intention, and I think it is the intention of the industry, that the principal not be compounded, so that whenever you're paying off on the principal, that principal, the interest rate is going down, the amount owed, not the interest rate, but the amount owed is calculated against what principal balance remains. So one suggestion that I would have to make that clear, I think it's fairly clear in lines 69 through 72, but to be abundantly clear, at line 89, and this is where the interest rate is set under current law. It says that the charges and the interest rate would be together would equal no more than 25% of the principal amount advanced. Some have expressed concern that the principal amount advanced, let's say it's $1,000, would then the principal and charges would always be $250 because for every month, because of the fact that that was the amount advanced from the very beginning. So I would suggest that we just change advanced to the word owed. So at line 89, it would be the principal amount owed. And then likewise at line 92, where it says the principal amount advanced, we change advanced to that owed. That way you're being certain that if the individual is paying off the principal, then the interest rate will correspond to the new principal as it's being paid down. And that will be true if you make this change, both for a 30-day loan as well as for the new fixed term pawn transaction. So that's one suggestion that I've talked about with Representative Harrell about the bill. And then I had a question for the representative dealing with, my understanding from his comments earlier was that he intended that in both cases, whether a 30-day pawn or in a fixed transaction pawn, if a car is redeemed and has surplus value after the charges are taken and after all the applicable charges are levied, that if there's still any value left with the vehicle, that value is to be remitted back to the individual who previously owned the car. So I guess it's the pawnee. So the pawnbroker would have to remit that back. And so if I understood that correctly, I understood the change that he had recommended and has done at lines 110, but I don't think that solves the problem. I think the language that needs to be changed in order to effectuate that for both fixed transactions and otherwise is at line 379. At 379 is the affirmative duty of it's actually not even a responsibility, it just says that this language here from 379 down to 386 says that notwithstanding any of the foregoing charges that can be levied, and in the language at 379 says only in respect to fixed term pawn transactions, and I would submit that needs to be deleted. So if that's deleted, then it would say that notwithstanding the foregoing, within the 45 days of the pawnbroker's receipt of the funds from the sale of the pledged unredeemed motor vehicle, the pledgor or seller shall be entitled to receive all the proceeds from the sale of the vehicle in excess of the principal amount. So if the way I'm reading this, and Representative Harrell can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I'm reading this is that if you keep the only in respect to fixed term pawn transactions in there, then the surplus money would only be redeemable to the pledgor in those cases for fixed terms. If you delete the language, then it applies to both your 30-day and your fixed terms, providing additional consumer protection. So that if the individual has a vehicle that he or she has pledged, it's a $10,000 vehicle on the market, but to protect the pawn title company, they only loan up to, let's just say it's 50% of that value, and they loan $5,000. If the pledgor defaults and the pawnbroker then sells the vehicle on the marketplace, and it brings in the full 10,000. Without this language that Mr. Harrell's put in, Representative Harrell's put in, then the pawnbroker would get to keep all 10,000. And that is the way it is under current law. That's not my understanding of the desires of Representative Harrell. So by including this language at lines 379 through 386, that would prevent the surplus from being retained by the pawnbroker and go back to the pledger. Then, but I submit to the committee, we need to strike only in respect to fixed-term pawn transactions in order to capture both.
I'm in, and it's, I have that on my copy, and it's highlighted here, and I am in complete agreement. So, on line 89, as Chairman Welch said, there no issue changing the word advance to owed. Line 92, as Chairman Welch said, no issue at all with changing the word advance to owed. And on line 379, no issue at all with striking only with respect to fixed-term pawn transactions. I think he's absolutely right. That clarifies the intent of the legislation.
And then one more item, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, sir.
And I think this is also Representative Harrell's intent, that at line 358, and correct me if I'm wrong, Representative, but I think the language here, or the rate of interest and the amount of charges applicable, that's if there's a lower rate that's been...
And it should add applicable at the time of renewal.
Okay.
So if you have a competitive rate, let's say that's 9% rather than the maximum permitted at that time, 12.5, because you're competing in the marketplace. So keep in mind, these rates are the maximum allowed by law. There's many rates in the marketplace that are below these rates. So if you're coming to at the time of renewal and you're at 9%, then it remains at 9%.
That's what I understood. So what I was going to suggest is that where it says after the word or, I would strike the word the and say a lower applicable rate of interest at the time of renewal. So it would read, or a lower applicable rate of interest at the time of renewal, and amount of charges applicable at the time of renewal. I think that clarifies that this is concerning a lower rate, something lower. And I don't want it to be read that the rate could be higher.
Now, you're taking the first or on line 358, is that correct?
Yes, sir. So at where it says month or at 358, then it would read from that point on a lower rate of interest at the a lower applicable rate of interest at the time of renewal, and amount of charges at the time of renewal.
All right, one more time. Okay, we're going,
Could we just have at the time of the renewal once? Could it say month or a lower applicable rate of interest and amount of charges applicable at the time of renewal?
That's fine. That would be good. So if you want to restate that.
So in line 358, the line will now read month or a lower applicable rate of interest and amount of charges applicable at the time of renewal.
all right, you hesitated on that. Read that again.
On line 358, it will now read month or a lower applicable rate of interest and amount of charges applicable at the time of renewal, semicolon, or. You're correct. The word "the" is gone, and the way I read it, you're correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you have something better.
No, that's good.
Okay.
No, I think that's appropriate. That if it's okay. And then the last one was at lines 321. We have the word "advanced" appears again, and Legislative Council has pointed out that if we're going to make that change, that at lines 321, where it says money advanced, we should say money owed, so that it's consistent.
Okay. All right, at this point in time, we have, I count 5 amendments that we're making on this. Line 89, we're changing advanced to owed. Line 92, advanced to owed. Line 321, advanced to owed. Line 379, we're deleting that whole section from only through transaction, 379, if that's correct. 379 from only in respect to the fixed term pond transaction, that is going away. And then on line 358, we've got whatever you read a while ago.
We're striking the word "the" on line 358, and in place of the word "the," we're inserting a lower applicable, and then the line continues just as it is, and after the word "applicable" at the end and before the semicolon, we're inserting the words "at the time of renewal."
At the time of renewal.
Therefore, the entire line will now read, line 358 will now read, month or a lower applicable rate of interest and amount of charges applicable at the time of renewal.
Okay, got it. Everybody got that? Chairman Martin, you have a question?
Well, a question of the chair. If it looks like we're getting to the point of perfecting the bill, if the chair would allow, I would move due pass of LC 3916, 38 ERS, so to put
We
the
get the
committee in posture so that as the chair walks through these amendments, they could be taken without objection or vote
Okay.
to move it forward.
All right, we got to move in second that we have this bill before the committee as a due pass so that we can make these amendments and apply them at the time we go through them. Do we have any other amendments that will be submitted at this time? Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. You know, this isn't a subject that I've ever considered myself an expert on, but you know, for about 25 years here, this legislature has been embroiled in these disputes from time to time. I think it was said earlier today from the well that we seem to be the referees on these things. And I don't think that I've ever known but just a handful of issues over the years that's probably been more viciously debated than when you get into these different money transactors. We've got several of them out there today, and I thought that maybe we could go for a while more, maybe another decade, but obviously not, about getting involved in these. And I certainly never have denied the fact that depending on the instrument and the type of business model out there, that you've always got people who are subject to go to these different ones, pawn shops or title pawns or payday lending or GILA type operations. But one of the things that concerns me is that now we're fixing to get embroiled into something that we're changing the standards. You've got folks that have been in the title pawn business, and this process had worked pretty good, and apparently they do pretty good because they seem to be the only ones I see the ads on TV these days. But now they're wanting to get into the move up into a different model of doing installment loans and things, which has pretty well been reserved to GILA. And GILA's, of course, they're registered and licensed by the Insurance Commissioner's Office, and they go to certain standards. And I'm concerned a little bit about this because it looks like a big step forward for the title pawn and these type of companies that are doing these instruments. I've got an amendment in front of you, and quite frankly, we know what this is. This tries to put them in line so that those folks, if they want to be a GILA type operation, then they'll be subject to certain things. And I'd like for you to look at it. It's AM 390182, and since we now we're dealing with a different substitute, on line 1, if you would consider changing the LC number to 391638 ERS, that would put this. I think that would put this amendment in line with the correct substitute that we're dealing from. And I'd like the consideration of the committee to look at that because it does a couple of things, and quite frankly, it's might be called a death knell. I'm not sure, but it could be. But it also, and I'm patently honest in what I'm doing with this. But by limiting the words of greater than $3,000, we're basically protecting the Gila loans in that type of business model today as to what the standards we've had, and it keeps them from being subject to unfair competition. Because as I understand what we're doing, the competition, if we allow this other subsect or this other sect of loan operations to go through that without registering or not being under the usury statutes, and we're basically I think we're going to be opening up the door to create some major problems. And I would appreciate the consideration of this committee to look at that.
Oh, sorry, I cut my mic off. All right, we have that before us. Any questions on this amendment submitted by Chairman Powell?
Mr. Chairman, I certainly do.
All right, I bet you do. Hold on 1 minute here. Let me get some of this cleared off. I think I've got number 27. You have, did I not clear you a while ago, Chairman
No,
Martin?
you didn't clear me, but Mr. Chairman, if the gentleman's, are we gonna discuss the amendment or? should
We're
vote?
gonna let Representative Harrell talk to us first, okay? All right, Representative Harrell, tell us about what you think on this amendment.
Well, my sweet mate has offered a poison pill and nothing more. It puts the price to loan $3,000 and above for people that need to borrow $200 or $500. It is, he called it a death knell. It just guts the whole bill. The only intent of this amendment is to say, if it were to be included and passed, is say 1 million borrowers in the United States that have entered into title ponds over the last year or so, and the 80 or 100,000 of them that have open transactions in Georgia today should have to go somewhere else to find their money, and it's an attempt to put a whole industry out of business. It does nothing more. He's changing the definition of the new product to a definition that makes the product worthless.
And let me ask a question. I take it, Chairman Powell, that they would be in compliance with terms of subparagraph A1A of Code Section 742. Is that the Gila transaction code there?
I believe it is, Mr. Chairman.
You believe that's what that refers
I
to?
believe that is, and I think that my office mate has hit it dead on the head. I said poison pill, poison pen. He says a poison pill.
Okay.
And I think that possibly the rationale to this is to move this bill to hold it where it is, because the people that are in that business today, they seem to be making money. The people in Gila seem to be making money. And right now there seems to be a clear distinction between the different subsects of these financial companies.
I understand that, and I think you're right. We had that discussion in subcommittee, I believe, the other day, somewhat too. There's different, as been brought up earlier. I think Chairman Martin suggested that the certain banks and financial institutions in Gila and the others out here look at the ability to repay when they make a loan, and the title pond has to look at the vehicle they're taking. That's all the collateral they receive. So yeah, it's to me two separate products that we're looking at. And I think one of the reasons we were looking at this legislation was because of the federal group that's come down and saying you got to do something different, and that's what they were looking at. All right, we've got any other discussion on this motion, on this amendment AM 390182. We haven't, he's made a motion. I haven't heard a second. We're gonna ask that question. We've got a second. We got a move in second. And I guess since we've taken these, that was the last motion. Is there any other amendments to this piece of legislation at this time? I think the posture is you take them in the reverse order that they were brought forward. So we have a move in second on this amendment being included in the legislation. Okay, we got discussion. Chairman Martin.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear on this, that I heard from Chairman Harrell, and also I give Chairman Powell, the credit for being duly honest about the amendment. I mean, isn't it true if this amendment passes, essentially we're going to prohibit folks that can enter into these transactions now from doing so, because many of these folks can't pass a credit check, won't be able to be loaned to, and if they are successfully loaned to, if this amendment were to pass and they have to go to those folks with loans, that there would be in a position where they're not only the title that they would put forward, but they could also have their wages garnished. It would be a whole different level that they would go into. We're in fact taking options away from Georgians if this amendment passes. Is that true?
If I can answer that?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I think you're probably right if this amendment passes, but I think you've missed the main point of this amendment. Let's stop this legislation where it is and let these businesses continue to operate under the current statutes today that they're operating on, and obviously making a pretty good profit off of.
All right, any further discussion? Okey dokey. Representative Braddock, I think that's you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, but in stopping the legislation, we're not putting forward something that offers consumer protections and a better product for people in that situation where they need to borrow money against their car to have better products that are going to protect them from losing the one asset they have left. And that's not a good position, I think, to put people in.
It's not a question, so that was a statement, huh?
That was a statement.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Is it
If
not
I
true
may-
that?
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
That's a question.
Always put "is it not true." That makes me feel better.
And if I might answer her statement, Mr. Chairman, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And I think she's exactly right, but at what point this isn't providing any further protection, because by moving them forward, they're not registering with anyone. They're not falling under those certain statutes and the protections of, such as over at Gila, being regulated by the insurance commissioner.
All right.
Different product.
Got another question? Yeah, we're calling a question. We've got Amendment AM 390182. The question's been called. All in favor of this amendment, let it know by saying aye. Aye. All right, those opposed, like sign. No. All right, so the noes, this amendment has failed. Do you want you want a division? No. Chairman Powell? Okay, no.
I raised my mic
In surrender. All right. All right, thank you very much. All right, we're going to go back with our other amendments. We have, are there any questions or anybody would like to call for an individual vote on the previous amendments here? Is it all right to approve those by acclamation of the committee? All right, hearing no objection, we will approve these amendments. Sean Marie, do you have all these amendments in your legal mind of what we've done here? I have. You're good with the amendments and what we've done on these line 3? Yes, ma'am. All right, so those amendments are approved. Now we're back. We had a move and second on the bill. We're asking for a move and second. We have a move and second. We're going to ask for approval of this bill as amended in committee. All in favor of moving this bill forward, let it know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign?
Aye.
Okay, all approve, all those voting to move the bill forward, please raise your hand so we can make sure we get a count. All right. 1, 2, get a count. All right, all those opposed, raise your hand. Okay. It has moved forward. Y'all, this has been fun. Yeah, like a dadgum, what do you call it, root canal, yeah. But I love my committee members. Thank y'all very much. We are adjourned for the day. Y'all be safe, whatever you got to do.